Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Transformation Tuesday. So I love these case studies as I see how much work goes into restoring health by these clients, and I'm always humbled and amazed at their results. So today I'm talking about Brian. Now, Brian is a 32-year-old guy. He came to see me out of sheer desperation, basically. He'd been overseas on a holiday 2 years prior. He'd gotten food poisoning. He'd never been well since. He had altered bowel function, switching up between constipation and diarrhea, fatigue all the time, and he felt like he had a cold, a flu, or a sinus infection continuously for the last couple of years. So I'm Ange Sinclair, and I'm the digestive detective. So Brian really was at his wit's end. He'd been referred to me by a friend of his about 6 months earlier. So he wasn't sold on natural therapies or natural medicine. So it did take him a while to get used to the idea. He had been really high energy. He had a really high energy, high demanding job, which required him to travel throughout the world, essentially, on a really frenetic, ongoing basis. So he was a really busy bloke. So fortunately, he had found a really great doctor, and he'd tried many, and that he was working with. So it's really good. That's a really part of when you're having troubles, is finding a really great doctor that will help. And he had taken all the bloods that I would have asked for and a couple of more. So that was terrific. So that was one less thing we needed to do. Now, in Brian's quest to make himself feel better, he had already pared back his diet quite significantly. He was eating a really, really clean diet. He'd had a smoothie for breakfast, a soup for lunch, and generally a curry or some sort of casserole for dinner. He felt like he was now reacting to so many foods. He really had to cut down the amount of foods he was eating. Well, he had cut down the amount of foods he was eating. Hi, Maria. And so what happens is when it gets to that point, it's really hard not to react. You know, like I've seen people on 5 to 10 foods and they react to everything. So when you cut down the diversity, it really impacts that. So he knew what made him feel well, so he basically stuck to that food. So when we received his bloods, I noticed a few nutritional deficiencies that, you know, for the optimal range. So when the doctor looks, they look at the range of the entire sick population who gets those tests done. So I look more at an optimal range. So he had quite a few nutritional deficiencies. So we set about to fix those first. He'd also had many rounds of antibiotics in the last 2 years. Initially for the infection, and then he got Helicobacter pylori, because once you open yourself up to an infection, you're easy to get another one. He'd had 2 rounds of triple therapy for his Helicobacter, and then he had these continuous sinus infections. So every time he got a sinus infection, he'd go to the doctor and get another round of antibiotics. But fortunately for him, the Helicobacter went pretty quickly after his second round of antibiotics, and he could sort of manage the sinus infections with antibiotics. So you could see the amount of destruction that had gone on with his gut. So with Brian, my main aim for him was to do gut restoration. So due to that sheer volume of antibiotics that he'd had, he told me that he'd pretty much had an infection every week for 2 years. So, and whether that was a throat infection, the sinus, or a cold and flu, and then he'd had antibiotics. So we really needed to fix all that up. So our initial attack essentially was to normalize his bowel, which was pretty erratic. He could be severely constipated and then he'd get diarrhea in the afternoon. Really urgent and really intense, and he wouldn't know it was coming. So we needed to get his immune system back working. We needed to improve the nutritional deficiencies that he had to help him get his energy back. So we did add in, not take away, but add in lots of food back into his diet. Even though his diet was really clean and good, he had narrowed it really significantly. And you know me, how I bang on about diversity and variety. It's so good at helping build a damaged gut. So I use lots of prebiotic fibers, and we use lots of immune herbs, targeted antimicrobials, not ones that are going to do more damage. And then I did food, and more food. So in just over 3 months, which is staggering to me, Brian has had some fantastic results. So his bowel has normalized. His fatigue has gone from a 10 out of 10, where he was really struggling to get out of bed in the morning, down to now he says a 1 or a 2, if that. where he's now able to go to the gym a couple of days a week and lift weights, which he hasn't been able to do for years. So you can imagine this makes him pretty happy because that was one of his favorite things to do. So he hasn't had one cold or one sore throat or one sinus infection since late in May. So he's pretty happy with that. So if you feel like something is not quite right in your bowel, or you've had food poisoning and you haven't been well since, book in for a free 15-minute consultation. Let me help you get an action plan so you can get to the bottom of it for once and for all. You know, it's really hard to continuously put up with something that's going on for you when there's steps that you can take to really help you get rid of the problem. So for those of you on Facebook, the link is in the title. On Insta, the link is in the bio, and on LinkedIn, the link is in the comments. So if you're not in my Digestive Detective Love Your Guts group, come and join us. Come over, join up into us. Tomorrow we're having a talk about gut health. At 1 o'clock, we're talking about gut health. We're talking about weight gain. And we're talking about perimenopause and menopause. So it's a really hot topic right now. Everybody I meet, every woman I meet wants to lose weight, and it's impossible to do when you have a bad gut. So we're going to drop some myth busting onto that topic. So have a fabulous day. I'll see you soon. Bye.